Council.
We started the Cybersecurity Council 3 years ago to be a private place for security leaders to get together, share best practices, lessons learned, develop personal and professional relationships. Today, here at our annual conference at Q2 Stadium, we're handing the microphone to some of the leaders in cybersecurity. Having an amazing celebration of this group and the community that we've built with a bunch of major brands represented downstairs. These are giants of the cybersecurity landscape, and they are here right now, a part of our community. Austin is already on the map for information security and cybersecurity. It's a brilliant place to be. We are going to step forward together. Cybersecurity is in great hands. Good day, my friends, and welcome. We are broadcasting live. We are here for brand and reputational management with the good old boys from Hitch Partners. Yes, we have Michael Piacente in the hot seat. Yes, we've got Brett Starr in the hot seat. These guys have the data, they have the relationships, they have been building a future for CISOs all across the country and also in Europe. In the very recent past, they have released their 2025 CISO survey. We are going to ask about that right here at the top. But I also want to introduce my collaborator and partner, Dan Piercy. He's here with the Cybersecurity Council as well. So thank you for being here. Very much appreciate you being a part of the Cybersecurity Council. I'm looking forward to getting your insights on brand and reputational management. And let's start with that 2025 CISO survey. Again, you guys have the data. You know more than all the players know. I'm very curious. I have seen your survey talked about in depth and with enthusiasm on other cybersecurity podcasts that are out there. I'm thrilled to see that. I myself have gotten some value from it. My top question is, what has the response been so far? Any immediate insights?
Yeah, first of all, Scott, Dan, great to see you both. We had an awesome event with you last night, so thanks for that with Brian and the team. Yeah, it's fun year of collecting this. I'll let Brett get into some of the specifics, but I think overall, we were really excited about this particular survey because of so much that has changed. It's been a very tough market for the CISO job market in general, and we were curious to see where our trends were going from compensation levels to reporting structure, CISO protection. So overall, we're pretty excited. Over 500 participants again, and just a lot to be able to break down things, look at things, and give the data back to the community, which was our main thesis and mission in the very beginning. So yeah, let Brett, you want to cover some of the details on that? I think there's some really salient points that we can take away from that.
Yeah, thanks, Michael, and thanks for having us. Yeah, just to set the stage, over 500 security leaders participated in our survey, and it's not anonymous. Like, we know who these people are, and they gave us their data, and so we're really humbled by that and really appreciative. And I think the reason that the community does that is because we give them back value, and we don't, this is for them. Yeah, we need the data for our purposes for sure. But the data we pretty much just kind of package and feedback to them so that they can kind of understand where they are and help negotiate their packages. The first thing that we noticed that was a little bit surprising was that compensation levels pretty much held steady. We thought that they were going to go down, just given, we've had a couple of really rough years for cyber security leaders. So many have contacted us that they're out of work or in transition, and we thought that companies would use this as an opportunity to negotiate their compensation downwards, but it just didn't happen. It basically held steady, and in fact, you'll see the rise from year to year, pretty much geared right towards equity. And the equity markets had a good year last year, and so that's kind of where you see that. So, Michael, anything to add kind of on that?
Yeah, I mean, every day I'm talking to a CISO and they're like, the comps are going down, the comps are going down. I'm like, no, they're not. And so here's the data. I think the challenge that when we hear that is that look, we're in the cycle of moving the market back up. We've been in a down market for multiple years, 2.5, almost 3 years in this particular, more supply than demand. I've talked about it ad nauseum on these type of events. And I think the thing what people don't realize is the first thing you see that come back are job postings, right? And job postings are always going to be, if you're posting a CISO role, think about the economic behind that. You're probably not in a high consequence situation. You're probably doing it for the first time, trying to discover what's out there, and you're getting to get about 1,000 resumes. But most likely, the compensation that you're going for is probably below the cybersecurity poverty line. No offense to those companies, but that's just the truth. Most companies who are posting are not going to be at the levels that we're seeing at comp. And that does not necessarily reflect the majority of the searches that are out there, or the jobs that are out there. Just happens to be less roles right now. And so everyone's kind of concentrating on this. They were asking $110,000 for a CISO, and it wasn't really, in the light there. So I think that's the other point is to make is that, look, the data's here. We have the data. It hasn't gone up exceedingly, but it certainly hasn't gone down. I think that's more important for everyone to know. So.
And a follow-up question, are you getting feedback from CISOs out there? Hey, this is helpful. Are HR teams and C-suites that are looking for their next CISO leveraging your tool, and have they just talked to you in the last month as well?
Absolutely. Yeah, we've had probably half a dozen examples of individuals that have walked into their HR leveling discussions, both, by the way, both for themselves, but also for their hiring needs too. If they're not at a certain level, how are they going to be able to justify bringing in their deputy teams, their chief architects, their security engineering, product security folks, compliance teams? Like, it's really important for them to see the leveling. We actually had that this year. We did have a number of folks participate at the sort of next layer down, which we added towards the end of the survey, which was helpful for many. But it warms our heart every time we hear someone that's had a good experience using this. And there's other surveys out there that are also excellent. Our competitors do it. So it's really important for everyone to know that these tools are available. I think if everyone can get away from using Wrongford, that's what we call Radford. I think that would be a good thing. Nothing against those folks. I'm sure they're really nice, but the data's off, specifically in this particular category. It's not off. It's way off. So I think just having this as an artifact to use is helpful. We love when we use it. The VCs use it all the time. The private equity companies use it. We are not surprised when it shows up on a board deck. It's happened a few times for Brett and I, and our logos in the corner. We're like, wait a second, but it's a kind of a humbling experience.
Well, your survey is both authoritative, insightful, and empowering. So it doesn't surprise me that people are using that tool. So congratulations. I know that it took many, many months to put that together. It also speaks volumes because people are trusting you to give you that information so you can compile it. That means you have outstanding relationships across the cybersecurity landscape. So well done. Thank you.
We're trying.
Please do it again.
Yeah. Thanks. Brett, was there any points sorry, Brett, any other points you wanted to make on that? So I cut you off. I apologize.
Oh, no. I mean, one of the things that was also surprising was the tenure trends. I think you'll see all kinds of articles about how short the CISO tenures are, and we wouldn't argue with that. And it's difficult to kind of capture. So what we did was we asked the CISOs that participated in our survey, how long have you been in your current role? And we've asked that last year. as well,
Mhm.
to try to just get a definitive number on that. And it actually went up from about 35 to 39 months
Mhm.
this year, which again, that was surprising, just given how many CISOs are out of work. Um, we would attribute that to uh, first of all, it's a tough job market, so CISOs are going to be less inclined to leave. They know they're seeing their colleagues struggling to find other roles. So that's
Mhm.
one factor that we've seen. I think another factor that we've seen is I think companies have a much better understanding, certainly at the public company level, as to what a CISO should do, especially during their search, so they're not missetting expectations for CISOs coming in. And I also think that companies are funding their programs in a way that CISOs feel like they can be successful at those programs. You know, so I think that those are some of the things that we've seen. Again, surprising to see the tenure piece go up. Now, on companies less than 250 people, the tenure is still pretty short. It's about
Right.
25 months, and that we would expect as
Mm.
well, because there's just not a lot of expertise at smaller companies to really understand uh, what the right fit would be at that point in time in the company's life. And I think the other thing is CISOs kind of age out as companies kind of scale. The person that gets you, to 250 people is probably not the same person that gets you to go IPO.
There are definitely scales within scales here. Absolutely. I was observing and listening to the adversarial podcast. I don't regard them as a competitor. I just regard them as a peer that's a great source of information. They were talking about your survey results, and they were specifically talking about how 65% of CISOs are now claiming some level of ownership of identity and access management. And that number is very different than in some recent years. And on the adversarial podcast, they were asking, is Hitch asking a strange version of the question, or are CISOs answering it in a strange way suddenly? Uh, have you come across questions in your survey that had some querulous responses?
But that's a fascinating question. I'd love to hear Brett's answer. And actually, our rock star in the back, Jason Owens, probably would be able to add some content. We probably spend 50% of the time gathering the data, another 50% of the time kind of organizing the language and how we ask the questions very carefully so that we can get the most valuable results. There have been a few situations, you live and you learn. This is our 8th year. And we've had some, kind of questions that we wish we would have worded better. Interestingly enough, AI doesn't really get you there. It's really more about the human subtleties and nuance. So we found that out, trying to put things into AI and see if they come back with a different kinds of question. So it gives us some ideas, and like they say, the co-pilot thing, but it
Ah,
really it comes down to the human touch. So we've had some situations where I wouldn't say a lot, but we've had a few where we just wish, oh yeah, that was, I wouldn't say queryless, but not the result we wanted. Yeah.
I understand. Uh, I would
Yeah.
like to take us
None of
to.
us have none of us have a degree from the Pew Research Institute. So, but we are the blue collar CISO survey type folks. Let's put it that way. So,
The CISO survey that we've been discussing deserves its time on the stage, but a lot of folks with us today are here for brand and reputational management. So I want everybody go check out the survey results and participate when Hitch asks you next year, uh, or later this year. You guys have to get an early start. But let's go to brand and reputational management for
great.
CISOs.
Yeah.
Now, Michael, you and I talked a couple of months ago about the state of the CISO for 2025. You talked to us about headwinds and markets and opportunities. And now is the time for, I'm hoping, Hitch Partner Insight to teach us how to be a better CISO, how to enhance your brand and reputation, what are the proper things to do out there? And for the first question to you, I'd like to invite my partner Dan Piercy to go right ahead, brother.
Yeah, you
Put the
bet.
first
Yeah,
question out there.
yeah, good. So, Brett and Michael, I mean, probably top, just right off the top, most obvious question is, in your extensive experience placing CISOs, um, what is generally the most common missed opportunities that you see in the leaders managing their own brand?
Yeah, I love that question, Dan. Well, the biggest one is that they just don't. Most of them just don't manage their brand. So I wouldn't necessarily call that a miss. That's just the nature. And that's not, by the way, that's not a problem. I'm not putting that in a negative light. It's just CISOs are really busy. They're overworked, and sometimes brand, uh, that prioritization is not there, and that makes sense because they're solving big problems and they're really focused on that. The thing that we are trying to focus on as well is helping in career development. And so in this time where the market, you have an enormous population of those that are looking for roles, whether it's a full-time CISO or a vCISO or something else, having a brand to stick out and differentiate yourself, because the supply is greater than the demand right now, is really important right now. And if you get into a little bit further, I think a lot of natural inclination, if you don't know how to do this, everyone tries to be everything for everyone. They try to be the infosec wizard and the appsec wizard and the prodsec and the compliance and sales enablement and on and on and on. Personally, we think that's the wrong attempt, or the wrong approach. It's right now it's about specificity. Those that are, and a great example is we do a lot with product security, high consequence product security, cloud native environments. That's a big thing for us. And those who have a really great story there that can really drive that conversation, can think like, act like, talk like a software developer, they're really sticking out. And because that's really where a lot of the headwinds are going. Those that have the ability of a concept we call yo-yoing. So you start with a much bigger idea at the top. You try to organize that. You drill into the details as the more folks that you talk to in the organization, outside of the organization. You iterate, you mess up, you incorporate the feedback, and you do it again. That's the yo-yo effect. And so those that can do that in their specificity are really standing out in the market right now. The storytelling is key. It's been something I've been harping on last couple months, is the kind of the art of storytelling as a CISO. Never before has it been this critical to have a great story as a CISO. The things you've accomplished, the breaches you've been through, the teams you've built, etc. So having that, and that's really, I think a lot of CISOs are starting to learn that. I wouldn't say it's a missed opportunity, Dan, but it's a newer muscle for many of them.
The whole world is doing better at telling their own story. And I say that as somebody that's interviewing entry-level people. Even the entry-level folks are becoming much more skilled at just telling their story. So, here I am as a 25-year vet of IT and security, and I've had to polish up, make sure that I could do it better. So your insight sounds right to me. Um,
That's good to hear, by the way, at the entry level. That's something we worry about. It's, storytelling comes with experience, and having experiences to tell the story about. So sometimes you don't have enough content. It's harder to make that connection. So it's great to hear.
Well, let's say we've got an active CISO out there. How can a CISO approach thought leadership and having a public persona without adversely impacting their own organization or their immediate organization's security posture? How do you be a public facing CISO?
Yeah. Brad, if you want to take that one and start, or you want me to jump in?
My answer would be it depends, because the first thing you need to do is before you disclose anything publicly, you need to get approval from your team. You don't want to become an even greater target because you're spewing some information out there that you shouldn't be spewing, so to speak. Yeah, that's the thing. And the other thing is for me personally, it just starts with substance. You've got to have, something unique or something you've gone through something and you figured something out that can help the community, and that's where you start. I don't want to. I wouldn't want to see a bunch of posts without any substance to it or anything that's going to help the community.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I think you really have to align with the company on what you are sharing, what you're open to share. A lot of the times, the brand, by the way, has nothing to do with the content of what your organization is doing at a security posture level. A lot of it's just how-tos. How did I get through a situation? What's the thought leadership behind how I handle the situation? But understand what you're sharing and make sure that you're not, to Brett's point, not providing too many details. And look, we understand there's tricky situations. These are tricky, right? Not everyone, if you're in a financial services environment, you're probably not able to do many panels, podcasts, blogs, right? That's the world they live in. I run into that all the time when I'm talking about branding. How do I get around that? And there's other ways you can do it, right? You can be a brand leader or a thought leader inside your CISO Slack channel. You could be known as a thought leader there. That's a very private situation. You're not sharing anything confidential. When we talk about branding, we're not talking about using a megaphone, getting on LinkedIn and saying, "Here I am," right? There's many different versions of branding. If you are known as a thought leader in your particular community for a particular topic, that's just as powerful as having your name all over LinkedIn as a recognizable CISO figure, right? So just keep that in perspective, I guess. And I think Brett said it well.
Hey, Michael, along those lines, for those with a higher public visibility or that leadership badge, if you will, how is their compensation and career opportunities different than others?
Oh, you mean the CISOs with stronger branding?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Do you actually see? Is there a correlation between those with a greater visibility and a more thought leadership on where they end up in the pay and the compensation?
Yeah, we haven't run that survey yet, Dan. So might be a good idea, Jason, if you're listening. Let's put that down. I don't know that we have a correlation there. I think the correlation that we see is a more robust pipeline of opportunities coming to them in the form of paid, unpaid advice line. I just know we know probably 25 or 30 really strong CISO branders without crossing the line into like celebrity CISO level. We can get into that later, but the idea being is they're known as thought leaders in a particular area, maybe an industry. And when I think of a problem that I have, like what's going on in this particular industry, what's going on in this particular sector, I'll call them. And so they're just like depots for information. And some of that information coming to them, some of those artifacts are great opportunities, CISO opportunities. They're like, we need to talk to this person. Or some of them are just, I need advice on something. Either way, all roads lead to them. And they're that. So there's not a compensation. I wish there were. That'd be pretty cool. We could sit here and talk about you have 25% greater compensation if you just brand yourself. That'd be neat. I don't think we could say that right now. So.
Okay.
Well, I would like to respond to your question, Dan, because of this podcast. When I'm interviewing candidates to work on my team, some of them arrive knowing me because they've seen the podcast. And also I can tell the ones that haven't, I was like, I would like you to get to know me, and you can look at this podcast and you got, 25 plus episodes and growing, where I'm exploring all sorts of different topics. You can get to know my personality, my leadership style, and what comes across right here in the podcast forum. And so it's been a tool for me for recruiting. So I would assume that if you have an established public brand through artifacts, whether it's articles, books, speeches, podcasts, reports, white papers, that is a way to communicate, and it does have value. I don't know if Michael and Brett could give a percentage of extra success that comes from it, but their recruiting instincts are going to say this does mean something. it has something intangible, some kind of secret sauce in there. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this brand and reputation management discussion.
You know, the only thing I would say to that is just you know, if you look at a pure sales pipeline, and you know, by you doing some work on your personal brand, you're just going to have more opportunities. The more opportunities you have, the better better negotiating position you have to negotiate your compensation. So I mean, it's just common sense.
I'm going to refresh Dan's question. This is it's a slight different version of what he
Great.
asked, but what types of content or messaging tends to resonate best for CISOs when they are trying to communicate with their board or their C-suite? Is there certain types of branding that helps more than others?
Yeah, well, I think the messaging brand is when you're with the board, I wouldn't get too focused on your brand. I'd focus on the job at hand. And so some of the things that come to mind when we're talking, when a CISO is conveying a message, it's conveying a level of confidence, right? About their understanding of the risk and the ROI that they're about to present to the board, to their executive team. And can they provide enough data to get buy-in to that for the risk tolerance in that company, right? Are they aligned on the risk tolerance, you know, the risk register on the level of tolerance that they have around that? But boards are looking for confidence that you know your material, that you can navigate them through, you know, to the shore safely, that you have a project blueprint that, you know, basically exposes a level of confidence and that you're building, that you can get them through highly nuanced situations. The last thing they want is Chicken Little. You know, sky is falling, I need money. Sky is falling, I need to, you know, we need to do all these things reactively. That's really not helping the business. It may be true, by the way, in some cases, but the perception, again, back to the storytelling, back to the yo-yoing, not showing up to a board meeting and expecting that they're just going to listen is another one. You really have to think about building those relationships between the lines, find an ally on the board, and really kind of hone in on these messaging. Ask them to help you, right? They're humans just like you. They were not too far removed from where you were, whether they're a CISO or a CFO or a head of product, whatever it was. They're good humans and they're there to help you so that you can help their companies. And so I think really getting in and understanding what they're looking for, understanding the nuances of the messaging. But I would worry less about what brand you're building in those conversations. The brand comes after you've already done the job well, you've already made an impact, and then remembering what that story was. I think that's one of the big, going back to your first question, one of the big misses is that CISOs have short memories about the great work they've done. When I'm interviewing them, I find this a lot. I'm sure, Scott, you probably see this with some of your interviews as well. It's like, well, that's a really interesting thing. Let's peel that back. And you realize that this is an amazing story here that they've either forgotten about, maybe they have some PTSD around it. But when you bring it to light, it's pretty fascinating. It's pretty valuable. And I think that more CISOs need to tell their story. It starts with being able to codify that for a board conversation as well. So
I like it. Dan Piercy, please bring another question to the table.
Yeah, and this might be for Brett. I think Michael and you both have kind of commented on it, but I'd like to hear his thoughts. Are there any common platforms or channels or other ways that you see? I'm looking for kind of like nuts and bolts for CISOs, especially those who are newer to the job, to kind of increase their brand awareness. Best practices, other, you know, what are you seeing the CISOs do to build their brand?
I mean, LinkedIn and podcasts are the first two things that come to mind for sure. But again, you know, you have to be careful with that because you don't want to be over posting. You don't want to be doing a podcast about no important content. So I think there's a huge balance there that you have to really consider before you put stuff out there.
Michael, would you add to that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's all about substance. If you have something really interesting, don't just go out and build an artifact just to build one, right? I think like we use ourselves as that. I feel like I way over post on LinkedIn, and I'm really only doing it like once every. I actually have to send a post out today, but I'd be really cognizant of how many times you're getting out there. It's not it's not a race. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. You're trying to build your brand over a certain period of time and really hone in on your message. And I think that's really what it comes. But the nuts and bolts of, I agree with Brett, and presentation is also panels. Again, remember, it's not about the megaphone. It could be your style. I always tell people, focus locally, and then go, shop local, support local, be local, find some thought leadership skills in your local community, your local Slack channels, do some local presentations, and get your rhythm. Advisory roles are another way to do it, although I would warn not to overdo it. There's a couple situations where right now there's just so many advisory roles that everyone's, they're being invited to many advisory roles. It's hard to see where their operational experience starts and their advisory roles end on LinkedIn specifically. So that can be a little bit trying if you're, not forget about the recruiter or me, but just as we're looking at the same links that our CEOs and boards are looking at, right? When you introduce a CISO to an environment, the first place they look at is LinkedIn. They do not look at a resume. So be careful what's on your LinkedIn. If there's too much clout of information out there, just be really focused is our advice. But I do think that there's a lot of cool tools out there. The Slack community, getting together physically, in a couple times a year is also advisable as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, Scott.
Delivering value outside of security. You've hinted at delivering where you are, having positive relationships, helping your C-suite. But are there any tips and tricks to extending your brand and generating some reputation with people, maybe in marketing, maybe in sales, some of the paths less trod by the cybersecurity professionals?
Yeah, I can jump in on that one. I mean, I've always said this publicly to CISOs, in more of a general comment, but CISOs need to stop presenting so much to CISOs. So, I mean, it's amazing. Don't get me wrong. I love that we can walk into rooms and we see many, many happy, smiling, familiar faces, and that they have that same feeling when they walk into a room as well. They all know each other, being in the same space as one another. I think it's it really is. I mean, I'm a little bit biased, granted, but I will put up the CISO community against any professional community in the world today, even more so than CIOs. I think the warmth, the sisterhood, and the brotherhood that they have all been through a common pain point and consequence. It's great. Don't get me wrong. But in order for the CISO organizations or these communities to grow, they do need to start speaking to others in the business and specifically for them. So if there is a CFO group that's getting together and you're reporting to the CFO, ask your CFO, hey, can we come present to you? Can I come present to you about how I managed risk? And it's a private group, right? How do you converse with the product teams? Very important, right? If there's best practices that CISOs have been known as a disabler or a blocker for many product organizations traditionally, not so much in the modern sense, but traditionally. And so what are some of the ways you can break down those barriers? I really think it's important for CISOs to get outside, talk to industries, talk to their industry expertise, talk about their cross-organizational expertise. So that's great. There was an example I was trying to remember that there was I can't remember if it was Gartner or it was some other group. And I was like, oh, everyone does a CISO group. And I was like, are you aware that they have a CFO group and
Right.
like you're present. I see you on the panel every year for the CISO one, but they also have a CFO group. You're already a member. Ask if you can go present to the CFOs. Would love to have you sit there and talk about. No offense to CFOs, but some of the content they're probably talking about, it's like watching paint dry. It's like they might be really interested in how compliance affects their job, or CFOs have fascinating roles. So let's start entertaining them as well, or talking to them.
Well, there's definitely a two-way street there.
Sure.
One of the most accelerating parts of my career was when I reported directly to a CFO. So not only was that a working relationship, but it was also kind of a business and mentoring relationship. And I was like, I'm really seeing to the other side. I'm seeing all the way down to board of directors and equity, and my CISO brain is popping right now. Very
Yeah.
helpful to have those partnerships and friendships outside of cyber.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the other thing is, and this is not in everyone's personal personal list of characteristics, but if your personality is such where you can have fun with it, right? These are pretty serious topics you're talking about: how to protect company data, how to protect yourself. If there's a way to make it fun in the awareness and education. We have a friend of ours, a fantastic former CISO. He's moved out of there. His name is Jenner Holden at Axon, and great human. He did the coolest Star Wars themed security awareness video a couple of years ago. And it was so, I mean, I wish it was available publicly. It was just so funny and cool and light. And it was extremely effective in his company. A couple thousand people saw this. And I just think, like, those creative ideas, like CISOs are super creative. CISOs are really interesting humans, and they have a lot of great ideas. So just think of it that way. Just have fun with it. We should all have fun in our work. So.
Yeah, that was you took this right to where my question was, and I think you can expand upon it a little bit. What types of content or messaging do you find that tends to resonate with boards, executive teams? You mentioned the Star Wars and keeping things light. Is there anything else you guys would bring up? Maybe Brett, you've got some comments around this. Any particular content or messaging that you've seen resonate with boards?
Well, I mean, boards want to know, is the company safe? Are we aligned on risk mitigation? What our risk profile is, and you have to come up with pretty succinct ways to align with them on that. If you're presenting to the board, don't show up to the board meeting and just present once a quarter. It's not going to go well. You need to be having these relationships with board members all along, and figure out kind of what's in their head and what are they worried about with the company. So I think it comes down to CISOs. We love CISOs because they get work done via influence. They typically don't have huge teams to go get stuff done, so they get done things via influence. And this is all about building the relationships with other organizations. Like, it has to be part of your mindset to do that, to get to know the other organizations that you're going to be servicing, and the board being one of them. So you just have to invest in those relationships. If you don't, you're not going to be successful.
And Michael?
I completely agree. I think that I think Brett covered it all there, but I think it's really important to, again, get creative with the boards, show them metrics that really matter for what they're looking for as far as business. The risk to the business is really the biggest storytelling. Find a common. We used to say this before: is you need to find a common nomenclature or language that the entire organization, including the board, can start talking about all at the same time, so that when you're talking about definitions, that there's no confusion as to what this means. And that's really important, as in a growing organization. We've seen so many new executives walk in during our searches. Our searches are 90 or 100 days. They're not that long, but you have a whole new subset of thought process that are coming in, a whole new methodology of thought, organizational design. It's really important that there's an establishment of a common language. And by the way, if a CISO is not creating that common language of risk in the organization, someone else will. So, and it may not be to the advantage of the CISO. It may be metric based. It may be cost based, right? So control your narrative. That's what we talk about, the yo-yoing, right? Get the word there, make it fun, make it memorable. And I think at the board level, same concept applies.
Yeah, I would add. I mean, for a while, I was on a crusade to try to talk to some really well-known CISOs in our network and ask them, hey, tell me your best practices of presenting to the board. And the reality is, it's different. Okay. Like, there's just not a ton of common themes with CISOs, it really depends on your board. It depends on what your board is concerned about.
Yeah.
Which I found really interesting.
Well said. Yeah.
Brett and Michael, can you offer us some examples of some CISOs that have done it right? They've built a positive brand and reputation, and they've managed it over time.
Yeah, look, there's many good ones. This is not a skill set that's new to CISO. Some of them don't even think about it the way we think about it as a characteristic. They just do it. But there's a couple that I feel that are unique. I've told this story before, but one of my favorite ones is Mike Johnson, who's the CISO over at Rivian, another wonderful human being. And when he was at Lyft, he had quite a task. I think Lyft had a handful of security leaders or members on their team. And if you remember the time when Lyft was going head to head against Uber's security team, before Flynn was over there, Joe Sullivan, like some serious celebrity firepower, some amazing folks. And they were competing at both a company level, but also at a security level. But Mike's superpower was at the time, and still is, he actually just posted last week about this. I was delighted when it was like he came out of retirement for this, but he used to be really, really tough on vendors, and almost like a tongue-in-cheek and funny way, like, hey, here's here's an unsecure link that this salesperson just sent me from this vendor, and he'd post it and block out their name, of course, and use them as an example of, if you're going to approach me. And what happened was he would do that all the time, and in the process of trying to hire a team and catch up with Uber's security posture and their brand, he was able to create a following where security engineers were like, I want to work for that person, right? He seems like he's really really focused in this area. He stands for great things. He stands for protecting company data. It's the reason why I, as a junior engineer, got into this world in the first place. And as a result, his hiring track record was just absolutely tremendous and was accelerated as a result of his personal brand that he built. And he also made it funny and fun. So that was like one of the greatest stories that I know. And early on, like Brett can jump in too, but like he was one of the first ones to do the podcast that really were talking about best practices. They weren't like a, hey, here's me kind of thing. He always focused on his guests. And this is a common thing that we see now, but back 2017, 18, this was not a common thing for systems to do. So he's always a great example. Also, Jamil and Phil Venables and Heather Gant is great. I mean, I could just go on and on about those that do really do a great job, great content, great timing as well. They're not just going out there and saying something just to say it. There are those individuals as well. Nothing wrong with it. It's just not as effective. So I don't know, Brett, if you had one that came to mind.
Just shout out to Heather Gant. I mean, she put a lot of work in with the cybersecurity team,
Absolutely.
which trying to get the DEI folks into security just to begin with, just because the numbers are so abysmal. But again, that's one way. I mean, it's obviously a cause that she believed in deeply, but it's also a way to kind of get her brand out there and do something really positive for the community.
Yeah, there's so many. Kirsten Davies, Joe Sullivan. Like there's so many. We communicate with them all the time. Sometimes I take it for granted that we know these amazing people, but I think there's some ambassadors in the CISO space. And by the way, they've been doing it a long time, and they're tired. So this is a call for the next wave of graduates to come up and find their voice and find their expertise. I think this is a really, really key time for CISOs and those that are moving into the role, even if you're not in the CISO role, to start finding your voice and start finding your brand, because there's a lot of folks that have been doing it a really long time. You wonder how long they can continue to do it. So
I appreciate that you are putting out the invitation to all comers. Please come to cyber. Please raise your voice appropriately and with the right amount of volume, but please be a part of this community and help push it forward. I have to remind myself that cybersecurity is a tough business, and sometimes, perhaps even often, I need to be the source of enthusiasm in the room because security is it's difficult. Sometimes I describe myself as a security therapist, a security coach, a security cheerleader. Oh yeah, I'm also a security engineer sometimes. But it's I really appreciate that you just put the call to action out there. Hey, step up. Please be a part of this wonderful world. Is there? We talked about LinkedIn and podcasting. Have you come across CISOs that are also pushing forward in other areas of media?
It's a good question. I mean, I think there's a profile that you'll see at the highest levels of, Wall Street Journal and Fortune and Forbes, and there's a lot of contributing writers. There's all these new cool videos everywhere on YouTube and LinkedIn on the how to, or let me get you through this situation. I think CISOs are doing a moderately good job there. Again, I think we don't want CISOs messaging to be diluted as a marketing ploy. It needs to be substantive. And so what they have to say and what lessons they can teach are really important. And by the way, just to go back to that, I certainly appreciate all that you do, Scott. And it is hard. Some of the last couple of years, I mean, this hard. Brett and I and the team, like the market hasn't been great, and it's call after call, Zoom after Zoom, meeting after meeting of people that are in dire need. Some a little bit more runway, some a little less runway. CISOs, I've said it before, they're not great at looking for jobs, nor should they probably be good at looking for jobs. It's not something that they've done before. So like just be kind to yourself, and just remember this is a tough road that we're in right now. But it's been last couple of years, being a cheerleader in this type of environment is very difficult. I'm generally a very positive person, but boy, there's been a couple evenings where it's hard. It's just really hard to hear people's people that you want to help, really good people out there. I'm sure every industry in an economic downturns like that, but again, this is the one we focus on, and so we get really ingrained in people's lives, and there are both positives and negatives and what's going on with them. So,
Well, Dan, our guests right here, Michael Piacente and Brett Starr, did you know that they've gone to TikTok with a series of cybersecurity dance videos? Have you seen those?
No,
oh, my mom would be proud. My mom would be proud.
And that might head towards the conclusion here. I know we're starting to wrap up, but pitfalls, reputational pitfalls, things not to do. You guys have any guidance on that?
Being overexposed.
Go ahead, Brett.
Yeah, being overexposed to any content. I mean, that's bad.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got a couple of them. Not working fluidly across the business within a company. And this is not necessarily a reputation or a branding thing, but thinking about just focusing on one group, and not being a great business partner to every group in your organization. This one's hitting home right now because we've had a couple of searches recently where the back channeling of CISOs has been like, they were great with engineering, but they completely ignored these other pieces. In fact, they were seen as a blocker. Mm-hmm. And that's the reputation we're trying to break, right? CISOs were always known as, not always, but they were known for a while as the office of no, N-O. And we've been trying to retool that to become the ambassador of no, K-N-O-W, so that they're like the place where people go. We always, for information, we used to joke that CISOs are the kind of chief look around the corner officer, and that whole, that changed after the pandemic. It wasn't the CIO that the companies were going to. There was the CISO saying, how can you protect all these people that are remote now? How can you protect our product development? We need to continue on. Who's going to navigate us? It's the CISO, right? And so I think making sure that you're an amazing business partner first is going to be key. And that's going to help, because that really does adversely affect your brand externally when it's being asked about. The other one I think is there's again, be measured about your brand, right? Celebrity CISO stardom is a thing. There's not a lot of them out there, but it's not a bad thing for your brand, but it's also not a great thing. And I'll tell you where it's not a great thing. It's if you're known as a celebrity CISO, it's really difficult to see where the operational excellence begins because you've been so focused on a message about CISOs that people want to know, are you going to be a great operator coming in here? And it's pretty rare to do that, right? It's pretty rare to be a great operator and a great spokesperson, right? They're two different muscles. Yeah, those are kind of the big ones. And then just a reminder to focus when there actually is substance. Don't just say something to say something because it was a rainy day and that's cool. And there's a community that will follow you. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is break the barriers away from the CISO following and move towards the business acumen. All right, be that ambassador to the CFO, to the product folks, to the general counsel, et cetera, et cetera. So, just be measured, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Michael Piacente and Brett Starr from Hitch Partners. Tell us a little bit about what you've got going on for the rest of 2025, maybe the next 90 days. Where can we find you?
Well, I can't wait to
On a
find
plane,
can't wait to find out.
on an airplane. No, go ahead, Brett. Sorry.
Yeah, we're just going to be grinding. That's what we do.
Yes,
Right.
They are indeed
absolutely.
grinding. We're going to be looking forward to maybe getting to see you at a cybersecurity council event, perhaps in November at our annual conference. Over the rest of 2025, we're going to keep talking to CISOs. I'm going to try to take your advice, Michael and Brett, and make sure that we continue to talk to more than CISOs and have some other folks in the room with us. But we got a lot of great events coming up this year. We've got our quarterly events. We also have a venture series where we're trying to bring venture capitalists into the room with local cybersecurity experts. There's a specific Texas bent there. We're trying to get the local Texas venture with the local cyber and try to do something do right by Texas. But it's already a phenomenal 2025 for our events, like all the way out to November. People are already signing up, sponsors are already showing up. So we know we've got our finger on the pulse of what a lot of people are looking for, that tight knit community of professionals really offering true insights into being a CISO plus practitioner information. Here's a tool and how to use it. So we're definitely trying to help. And Hitch Partners is a part of that. With your survey, with this discussion right here, I'm going to try to make sure I do you guys a solid and get this well distributed on LinkedIn, YouTube, and other channels. And I will not overexpose you, though I might put some of those TikTok dances up, Brett. I've seen them. They're good.
Uh-oh.
Dan, is there anything that I've missed? Did we have some other cybersecurity council stuff coming up that we should share?
The only thing that comes to mind is the next one that I'm focused on, and that's the end of March 27th at Innotech, that one-day conference we have in Austin. We're going to start off that morning with a VIP breakfast, and we've got a great topic. It's along the lines, it's not brand management, but it's about how do you effectively communicate to the board? What's that common language? And we've got the founder of the FAIR Institute joining us there. It's going to be a super informative and a great gathering. So yeah, be happy to have the folks who are in and around Austin join us there March 27th at the AT&T Convention Center or AT&T Conference Center by UT. So that's the thing that comes to mind for me, but we'll keep building community. Special thanks to Brett and Michael. It was great meeting you all last night, and thank you for joining us today.
Appreciate
Pleasure.
you.
And we are out. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I